Awesome. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I know schedules are pretty busy these days, so taking the hour out of your evening to chat with me. I really want this to be a conversation. If you have questions, I want you to bring them up. Again, there's really no question that's off limits. I'm a pelvic floor PT. I see all of it. So if you have a question, please ask, because there's probably somebody else in the group that has the question as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I want to do first is just help us as a group bring some awareness to our pelvic floor. Most of the time people don't know what the pelvic floor is. They don't know what it does. And then they have a baby or they have something go wrong with that area. And then they're expected to kind of go ahead to know exactly what's going on. And if you don't know what's happening in that area, it's hard to know what's happening. So the first thing I want to do is no one can see you, so you can do it in your home, but I want you to put a hand on your belly and put a hand on your chest. It doesn't matter which hand is where. And we're just going to take some breaths together and we're going to kind of see what happens when we do some breathing. I promise this will correlate with the pelvic floor and you'll see why I'm doing this, but I really want you to connect so that we can start bringing the most important thing, some awareness to the pelvic floor. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a deep breath in and out. And they don't have to be super deep breaths, but I just want you to notice and feel and see what's happening with your body. Do you notice more movement with your chest? Do you notice more movement at your belly? Do you notice that they're pretty equal? And just kind of notice and see. And we're not really judging our breathing. There's not one right way to breathe. We're just really assessing and kind of figuring out. So go ahead and take a few more breaths. We all sometimes need to slow down and remember to breathe. So this is good practice for everybody. So we just had another person pop on. So what we're doing right now is just putting one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, and we're just taking a few breaths and seeing kind of what happens. Do you breathe more into your belly? Do you breathe more into your chest? Good. Awesome. Perfect. So when we take a breath in, what should happen is our diaphragm should move down so that our lungs can fill with air. Our belly will kind of expand. And as we breathe out, the air leaves and the belly will kind of fall and the diaphragm will move back up. So the pelvic floor does the same thing and moves with the diaphragm to help coordinate our breath. And so now what we're going to do, because your cameras are off, you can feel free to touch your crotch. So you're going to kind of reach underneath your seat and you can reach from behind or the front, whatever is most comfy for you. But I kind of want you to get your hand just underneath your crotch. You know, we're not going into clothes or anything, just under your seat. And then other hand on your belly. And I want you to feel what happens if you take that deep breath in and try to focus that breath down into the belly. So as you breathe in, your belly should expand and your pelvic floor should actually descend a little bit. And when I'm talking about your pelvic floor, I'm going to show you my model here. We've got the bones here. So we've got our ilium bones on the side, pubic bone in the front, and the sacrum in the back. So when I'm talking about the pelvic floor, I'm talking about sorry, my camera's rotated. So it's kind of funny. All this muscle in here is your pelvic floor muscles. And so when you breathe in, they are going to kind of descend down with your diaphragm. And then as you exhale, they're going to gently lift up and return. So that is a great way to start some movement and some awareness and exercise in that area without having to do a Kegel, without having to add weights or anything fancy. That's just a really great way to bring awareness there and can be really helpful if you're having pain, if you're having prolapse, if you just had a baby. It kind of covers the whole gamut. We can really, really benefit from just getting that awareness. And it's something we can practice throughout our day. You can practice it on the toilet. You can practice it when you're sitting in your car. And we're really not doing a contraction. We're just breathing and feeling that descent and that gentle lift. So That's one of the best ways that we can bring some awareness, connect with that area that we often forget about and put, we kind of shame our pelvic floor because our society tells us to tuck it away and never talk about it. And so this is just a really great introduction way to start communicating with that part of your body. What I find that when people have leaking or when they have pain or when they have even low back pain or hip pain, their brain will often dissociate that area because it's not working the way that we want it to. And so just doing that breathing and getting that connection is a really, really great place to start. So we're going to dive into the topics that you guys wanted to hear about. We're going to do kind of an overview, but know that in the future, my goal is to do these talks on a weekly basis with a specific topic. So 1 week will be pregnancy, 1 week will be postpartum, incontinence, prolapse, all the fun stuff. But today we're going to kind of do a little overview of all the things. But again, if you have any questions, we'll touch base at the end. So this is mostly for me, but for pregnancy, and this is true, all of these topics that I'm going to hit on with pregnancy are true with anyone, because they're really great ways to protect the pelvic floor and to prevent pelvic floor issues. So you don't have to be pregnant to apply these rules. It's beneficial for anybody. But the first one is toileting. So with toileting, you may have heard of the squatty potty. It's kind of all the rage these days, but the goal with the squatty potty is to get your knees a little bit higher than your hips. And what that does is we have a pelvic floor muscle inside here that is kind of like a slingshot, and it actually wraps around the rectum. And so if you are sitting just neutral pelvis and you're just got your feet on the floor, not doing the squatty potty, that muscle is going to be tight, and it's actually going to cause your rectum to be in a bent position. And so it would be like this. And so instead of your poo just falling straight down in a straight shot, it has to go around this turn here. And so by doing the squatty potty, knees above hips, we actually shorten that muscle so that it can relax and be able to have your rectum be in a straight line. So then with gravity will just allow the poo to move down, and we don't have to push or strain or do anything hard. So it's beneficial for everybody. It's something I recommend for everyone. And these days they're actually making toilets a lot higher, which is worse for us because then our hips are even higher than our knees and our pelvic floor has more tension in it when we're trying to go to the bathroom. So if you're having a healthy bowel movement, you shouldn't have to be straining or pushing. You should be able to breathe. And with the right positioning, everything should just fall nice and easy. So that's one thing about toileting. The other thing about peeing on the toilet is making sure, oftentimes women are particularly bad about this. We like power pee because we're in a hurry and we have to go. So we like push and squeeze as hard as we can. But power peeing is actually pushing down on the pelvic floor and not allowing the pelvic floor to relax. So with having a baby, with pooping, with peeing, and with sex, your pelvic floor should relax and the other components should do the work. So when you deliver a baby, your pelvic floor should relax and your uterus contracts and pushes baby out. When you pee, your pelvic floor relaxes, your bladder pushes the pee out. Same thing with your rectum. And same thing when we're having sex. If there's penetration, then your pelvic floor should relax so that things can move internally. And so I think a lot of times we think about our pelvic floor being a pusher, like we're taught we're going to push the baby out. But truthfully, what should happen is the pelvic floor should kind of get out of the way and relax. So we're going to talk a lot about how to relax the pelvic floor, but that breathing component is the number one way to kind of start that conversation with your body. So that's toileting. The next thing I want to talk about is exhaling. So as we discussed, when you breathe in, your pelvic floor descends, your belly kind of expands and relaxes. As you exhale, your pelvic floor will do a gentle lift and your deep core muscles will also do a gentle contraction. And that just happens naturally when we breathe. And so one of the best ways to protect your pelvic floor is to use that breath to your advantage. So if you're going to go pick up your baby or you're going to pick up a box or whatever you're doing that's exertional, so something that's kind of hard, if you exhale, blow out on the hard part, you're going to prevent that pressure from going down into your pelvic floor. So it's intuitive to hold your breath if something's gonna be hard. Like you're gonna pick up something really heavy. We all wanna like and hold our breath. But what that does is it causes the pressure in the belly to push down on the pelvic floor. And then the pelvic floor has to withstand that and have extra strength. And if we also have a baby in there, we have, you know, whatever is going on with our pelvic floor, we don't want to be pushing that pressure down. So anytime you feel that urge to hold your breath because something's hard, you should be exhaling. Even if it's not super hard, if it's just, you know, bending over to pick up something light, getting into that habit of exhaling on the exertion or the hard part can be really, really powerful. It's, you know, how we weight lift, it's how we do a lot of those cool things, but we just don't think about it when it comes to daily activities. So that is one big thing. And again, all of these things apply even if you're not pregnant. They're just even more important when you're pregnant because your pelvic floor is already holding the weight of your baby. So it's already under stress. We just don't want to stress it even further. So the other thing that I love to talk about is self-assessment. So if you don't know what your pelvic floor looks like today and you're having a baby in 9 months or you're thinking about it in 5 years, you won't know what your pelvic floor should look like after you have a baby. And we know that pelvic floors change when we have babies. There's a lot of changes that occur, but the most common thing that I hear from women is that I never looked at my pelvic floor before. Now I'm terrified to look because I had a baby and I know it's different. And I kind of think about it like if you have a mole on your back. I'm like super freckly and I have lots of moles. So I have to have my husband like check the back ones because I can't see them. But, you know, if I don't know what they look like, then when one gets really big and concerning, you know, how can I keep track? It's the same thing with your pelvic floor. If you don't know what things look and feel like, then when you go to have, you know, if something is going on, if something's different, you won't know. And as you know, people born with female genitalia, it's tucked under there. It's hard to see. Like they don't make it easy for us to be able to take a quick look. But you know, you can use mirrors, you can snap a picture, you can, you know, you have a full length mirror, you can take a look, but there's lots of ways to do it that will allow you to really appreciate your anatomy. And that's all it is. It's really just getting to know your body and your anatomy so that you feel empowered to ask for help if something is off, because you really can't know if something's wrong if you kind of don't know what it was like before. That's something I walk all of my clients through because I think it's really, really powerful and it allows you to have control, you know, especially with pregnancy. There's so many pieces of it that feel so out of control. And if you can at least know what's going on with your pelvic floor, what it felt like before, so that you can kind of assess what it should feel like after you heal and everything, that can be really, really beneficial. So let me take a quick sip and then we'll move on to the next topic. And again, if questions are coming into your brain, just pop them into the chat. Feel free to direct message me in the chat if you just don't want anyone to know what you're asking, but just send them in so that we don't forget. So the next topic is the Kegel debate. So this is an interesting one. And I think if you follow pelvic PTs, you've probably heard a lot about this, but it used to be that we would just say, or doctors or whoever, healthcare system in general would say, oh, you had a baby, don't worry, just do some Kegels and it'll all be better soon. But what's really interesting about that is we're finding that, you know, people doing Kegels with an instruction handout or something, you know, 95% of people are doing them incorrectly. They're actually bearing down and pushing pressure on the pelvic floor. They're not lifting. So people are not doing them correctly in the first place. And then if they are doing them correctly, oftentimes they're not really necessary for that person, for that specific situation. So I always like to compare the pelvic floor to a muscle that we know pretty well. So my handy biceps here. we know that the biceps has to contract in order to lift things up, and it has to relax fully in order for me to walk with straight arms and have a natural posture. And so the pelvic floor is the same way. We need to be able to do a contraction, a full contraction, that's a Kegel, and a full relaxation, that's kind of that lengthening and relaxing that we talked about. If you are somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of your resting zone, and you do a bunch of Kegels, and you're never able to get that full relaxation, we end up somewhere up here. And what's really interesting is that if you're up here, so your pelvic floor is holding a lot of tension, you can have all the same problems that someone has that has weakness or no strength in the pelvic floor, like leaking, like prolapse, like pelvic pain, all the things that we see. And it's because your muscle's kind of just stuck in this position. It's not ever able to relax. And eventually it's going to fatigue pretty quickly because it's so short and so tired. And then you're going to have your leakage. So my goal with everyone, doesn't matter if they need strength or they need length, they have to be able to do both. They have to be able to lengthen fully and they have to be able to strengthen. And truthfully, you know, we don't need to have like pelvic floors that can lift thousands of pounds. That's really not the goal. We just need it to be able to hold our poop and pee in, you know, keep us continent and be able to keep us stable when we're moving around, and protect our low back. That's a big function of the pelvic floor. And to keep our pelvic organs nice and happy and in the place that we want them to be in. So those are the main roles of the pelvic floor. We don't need it to be like a strong CrossFit weightlifter, you know. So strength is usually not the issue for most people. It's that they're stuck in a tension state. They're not able to fully relax. And then we just have to build on that coordination component of getting both sides. And it's, you know, the pelvic floor is a group of muscles. That's all it is. It gets really complicated because it's an intimate area, but it's just like your biceps. And if we kind of put it into that perspective, it really helps us to see that these areas can improve significantly with just retraining, just like we would if we had broken our arm. So the debate is whether you should contract or relax. And in my opinion, we need both in order to have a full functioning pelvic floor. So the next thing I want to touch on is postpartum. So I know a lot of you are either newly postpartum or pregnant or have been postpartum in the past. And so I just want to touch on some kind of key things that I see a lot, and kind of how pelvic floor PT can help. So the one thing is the 6-week checkup. So the reason that you have a 6-week checkup after you have a baby is because that's kind of in the time frame of healing, just general healing time, 4 to 6 weeks. That's when your doctor wants to see you to really rule out big things like infection or something going on with your scar or something, you know, something that's more of a medical issue. And the thing that they're not doing, and with COVID, it's been really interesting because a lot of women are not getting even an in-person evaluation. They're getting virtual evaluations. But what's interesting, or what they're not doing as a OBGYN or a midwife, is they're not checking your pelvic floor musculature. And that's really what I specialize in as a pelvic floor PT, is what are the muscles doing? And again, if those muscles are kind of in a tension state, they might not be able to do what they need to do. And that might be why you're having pain or leaking or whatever the issue is. Sometimes they're just not able to contract because they're still healing. The other things we look at is we look at scar mobility. So if you have an episiotomy, we look at that scar. We look at a cesarean scar. We're looking at your breathing. We're looking at your jaw tension. We're looking at your posture feeding baby. I'm looking at how you're sitting on the toilet. So, you know, we don't treat the pelvic floor in isolation. I really am not able to, because it doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of areas of the body that are correlated with the pelvic floor. So for example, if you do have jaw tension, that can be correlated with pelvic floor tension. And that's because the area in the brain where the two parts of the body are mapped out are really close together. And so the same thing is true with like foot mobility. If you have really limited foot mobility, that can be correlated with tension. And I always explain it to people as like, some people carry tension in their necks, some people carry it in their pelvic floor. Just happens to be a different area. But similar as we would treat the neck for tension, we can treat the pelvic floor for tension and get things moving better and feeling better. So my biggest thing with postpartum is I believe that every single postpartum person needs a pelvic floor assessment after they've had a baby. And the reason I believe that is because best case scenario, I come and I see you or whoever your pelvic PT is, and I say, you know what, you're doing awesome. You're remarkable. Look, your pelvic floor is so amazing. You're doing everything great. I'm so impressed. It's wonderful. I don't have to see you again. Like, check in if you want to get back to X, Y, or Z, but this is all great. And that's the best thing that you could hear after having a baby and having that, crazy, often traumatic, exciting, fun experience. And so, that is best case scenario. Worst case scenario, we find a few things that we have to work on. But, the hope is that if we can just get more people getting more care, we can prevent a lot of people from being in their 60s and 70s with incontinence that they developed after their first baby. And the research shows that it's everywhere. I mean, there's so many women that I treat who are 30 years postpartum, and I'm treating them for an issue that they had with their first child. And so if we can eliminate it in the first 6, 8, 10, 1 weeks, or even the first year of after your pregnancy, we want to do that because we just don't want you to have to live with these issues because they're not fun. It's not fun to leak. It's not fun to have pain. It's not fun to do these things. So I really want to encourage you guys, whether you're 5 years out, 5 weeks out, 30 years out, there's hope along the spectrum. We can always help you get better, but I want to encourage you, if you're having an issue, to find some help because it really it can improve and it doesn't need to be something that you need to live with. So I will step off my soapbox. I know I get very worked up. Okay, so return to exercise. This is a really cool one too to talk about because they recently did a really cool research article about return to running after baby. And they used running because it was just the most common thing. And with research, they just have to pick like one thing in order to do the study. But they looked at running and they found like 10 or so different movements and exercises to test and see if people could do those things without having any symptoms. And symptoms could be anything along the spectrum, like pain or poor form with exercise, or feelings of heaviness or pressure or leaking or whatever they might be experiencing. And if you were able to do all those 10 things, then you could be cleared to go back to a running program. And I think it's just really cool because running is something that we can apply to other things like, riding your Peloton or getting back to CrossFit, whatever your specific goal is. And the nice thing about the screen is that it gives us specific things to work on. So if, say, you had trouble with 3 out of the 10 exercises, then we can use those as your exercises to improve on to get you back to your exercise. I also treat a lot of diastasis, which is not something that we're going to touch on a ton today, but if you guys have specific questions, that's often a limitation for people to get back to exercise. And I want you to know that nothing that's going on with your pelvic floor should limit you from doing what you want to do. I know a pelvic PT on Instagram who she had a very severe prolapse and she now does box jumps, but she rehabbed herself and got herself to a point where she was able to do that. And it didn't happen immediately. There was a process, but there's so much opportunity for you to get back, if you were exercising previously, to get back to being really strong and doing the things you want to do. And I also want to point out that as a parent, you have to be really strong because these kids get big and they get heavy and it's not an easy job to be a parent. So even if you don't like to exercise, we have to learn these tools because we have to carry the laundry up and down the stairs. We have to carry our babies when they fell asleep at the movies or whatever. It's not just for exercise, it's really for the things that you have to do as a parent. So just know that if you're having trouble with those daily activities and you're just feeling, that you're not able to keep up with it because of your recovery after a baby, this can be really, really helpful. So we're gonna keep moving. I'm doing pretty good on time. I'm kind of impressed. But if I'm talking too fast, be like, slow down. Okay, so prolapse. So this is an interesting one. I think prolapse is, so what I'm talking about is pelvic organ prolapse. So I'm gonna pull out my pelvis again. So in your pelvis, in here, we have the rectum, your uterus, and the bladder. And so they sit in different positions inside the pelvis. And if you have what we call pelvic organ prolapse, it can be that a pelvic organ or multiple pelvic organs have descended, and sometimes it can just be a small descent, or sometimes it can be that things are actually moving outside of the vaginal canal. And so my frustration with prolapse is that it's unfortunately really misunderstood in the healthcare world, and people are like mentioned the word prolapse during an appointment, and then they like go home and Google and they find these horrifying pictures, and it's really scary. It's scary to think that your organs are falling out of your body. Like, I don't care who you are, that's pretty terrifying. So what I love about prolapse, and I'm actually working on a continuing education to become a prolapse pro, which is just a extra certification to really work specifically with this population, because I think people need to know that you can have a significant prolapse and have no symptoms, and then you can have a baby prolapse that may not even be able to be graded and have a ton of symptoms. And it's also important to know that having that heaviness and pressure feeling after you've had a baby is totally normal, because your pelvis and your pelvic floor muscles are recovering. Like, they're still processing and healing and dealing with that. So I get a lot of women that are early postpartum and they're like, I know I have prolapse because it feels like it's falling out, like it's so bad. And oftentimes it's not. They don't have a prolapse. That's not what they're dealing with. They're just dealing with that area recovering. So I just want people to know that it sounds really scary, but it's really something that can be treated, and pelvic floor strengthening has been shown to reduce prolapses. There's also lots of other options too if things aren't reducing. There's pessaries, which they're made of different materials, but basically little supports or splints that you can insert in. And it's interesting, there's a lot of research coming out about even using pessaries as a preventative. So like there's some women that will just use them during exercise and then not use them the rest of the day. So there's so much hope out there. And again, you can have a grade 4 prolapse and do box jumps if that's what you want to do. We just have to, figure out what your goal is and what is going on with your situation. And the best way to know what's going on with your situation is to get an assessment. I think that people get really nervous about pelvic floor assessments, but it's the best way to know kind of what's going on and what we can do about it, and make an action plan so that you feel confident and empowered to move forward, because it doesn't need to be the rest of your life that you're dealing with this. The whole we have to pee and poop our pants the rest of our lives because we're moms is absurd. It's just not what we should be accepting for ourselves and for our friends and our family. So if you know anybody, spread the word. There's lots of ways to find a pelvic PT in your area if you're not local. And if we're not a good fit, I'm happy to help you find somebody that is. Because my goal is really to get you care, whether it's with me or not. It's really about getting you the help that you need. So off of prolapse, we're going to talk about leaking. So leaking can be, you can have incontinence with urine and you can have incontinence with stool. It's less common for people to have fecal incontinence, but the two go hand in hand. So if you are leaking urine, sometimes it can be, likely that you might be leaking stool as well. There's lots of different reasons why leaking can occur. It can be that tight muscle that's kind of fatigued and not able to hold. It can be a muscle that just doesn't have the strength to hold. It can be bladder habits. So we as just humans develop all these crazy bladder habits from the time that we're like little babies. Like for example, we go every time we see a toilet, we're like, oh, just in case, I'm just gonna run. I don't know, I might need to pee in 10 minutes. I should just go now. And that kind of stuff, what that does is it trains our brain and our bladder to be like, oh my gosh, there's a toilet, I have to go pee. What should happen with your handy bladder is it should fill slowly over time. It's also a muscle, so it should fill slowly. I think it fills up like 200 milliliters in 2 hours or something. And your pelvic floor supports the bladder and it will hold on and it'll stay contracted, not super tight, but it'll stay turned on to keep everything in. And then by the time that you make it to the bathroom, the pelvic floor should get out of the way, the bladder should contract and let the pee out. So if you go just in case every time you see a toilet, your little bladder forgets how to stretch, and then you get just a baby bit of pee in there, and then it tells your brain, I gotta go, I gotta go. And so not allowing the bladder to stretch and not allowing it to fill can cause you to feel like you have to go every 5 minutes. So that urgency and that frequency can be related to just that connection between the brain and the bladder. So there's so much that we can do to retrain that connection, and it happens pretty quickly. It's really remarkable to me how if we just eliminate these kind of bad habits that we've all developed, things do change very, very quickly for people. I had a lady the other day that I treated. She's had incontinence, fecal and urinary, for 15 years. And we had one session and she stopped leaking both. And it's not fully gone, but it's just proof that changing these little baby things can make a really big difference. So those are kind of my big pieces. I want to do a quick blurb about how to work with me if you are local, just so that you know what my spiel is. But I am both a pelvic and orthopedic physical therapist. So I treat also like neck pain and, you know, whatever else is going on. I just also specialize in pelvic health. And I'm fully mobile, so I come to you. I bring everything with me. I bring my table and all my supplies. I am going to be fully vaccinated next Monday, so that is exciting. But I do 1 hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on what's needed, 1 hour sessions in your home whenever it's most convenient for you. Because I don't have any children, I just have 2 pups. I am pretty flexible. So if it's something where you need me to come, you know, later in the evening or nap time or whatever, we can work together to figure out kind of what is best. And the biggest thing that I love to explain to people is that because I'm coming to your house, we're really able to assess everything. You know, we can really look at how you're breastfeeding, what position are you in, you know, how you get baby in and out of crib, how you get them in and out of car. All those things are really important because, again, those daily activities are oftentimes what is causing flare-ups in your symptoms. And so being able to really assess that versus being in a clinic where you just can't, you know, put it all together because you don't have the environment can be really, really helpful. I work for a larger company called Concierge Physical Therapist, and they're nationwide. So if you are not local, we do have pelvic PTs in other places, but I also just have a lot of really great connections with pelvic PTs across the country. So if you're looking for a specific area, let me know and I can direct you to the right person. So I appreciate you guys listening to me talk. And I would love to open it up to questions. I will touch on the chat questions. I will touch on the questions that were asked in the messages. And then if people want to, we can continue to chat question, or we can even open, you guys can turn on your audio and whatever if you want to ask a question that way. But we'll go ahead and start with the chat questions and see what we have here. Okay, so somebody asked about my thoughts on working out and feeling orgasm-y pressure, especially with things like crunches? It's a great question. So when we talked about the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, I'm going to stand up real quick so you can see my belly. Diaphragm is here, pelvic floor is here. So inside that is our abdomen. And inside that, it's kind of like a canister. So we have intra-abdominal pressure in our bellies. And so when we breathe in, again, everything goes down. When we breathe out, everything goes up. And so if we do things like hold our breath when we're doing crunches or whatever, we can sometimes increase that intra-abdominal pressure because it's not being blown out. It will increase in the belly and push down on the pelvic floor. And so that might feel like orgasm-y pressure because a lot of times when we have an orgasm, we kind of tense. So that might be what you're talking about. So with crunches, if we think about a crunch, the exertional part is the shortening. So we'd want to be breathing out as we go up and then inhaling as we go down, breathing out as we go up, inhaling as we go down. I would imagine if you can really get that breath component to it, that will help with that feeling of pressure because most likely you're holding your breath or you're breathing in as you go up, and then you're probably pushing down on the pelvic floor, and that's what's probably causing it. So I would imagine I would try that first and then see. It also might be that level of crunch or that level of ab exercise is a little bit too much for your pelvic floor or your deep core. So I would also look at modifying the exercise with the breath and seeing if that helps. Hopefully that answers. Let me know if I answered everything right. Or to your, sorry guys, it's kind of scrolling funny. Someone said they like that I get fired up. Oh my gosh, you should see me in my house. I saw a commercial the other day about a woman was in a hardware store. She goes to lift a bag of cement and she like looks over and there's a man, like a big strong man, and she like looks at him but doesn't want to ask him for help. And then it's like she decided not to ask him for help, so she goes to pick up the bag of cement and she springs the leak, and it's an ad for Poise pads. So not only are we being told that we're supposed to leak and pee our pants, but we also are being told that we need men to carry things around for us. I was very upset. But yeah, I get very fired up because it's important. You guys, this is important, and this is your body, and you do not need to live with dysfunction and unhappy pelvic floors. But thank you for appreciating my fieriness. Do I do talks on pelvic floor strengthening exercises during pregnancy, pre-birth as well? Yes. So my goal with these talks is really to expand. I would like to get to a point where we're doing really specific talks. So like doing a talk on incontinence, doing a talk on pregnancy, doing a talk on like specific exercises. I'm the kind of person that really wants to see all my people doing their exercises because like we were talking about, there's so many compensations that can occur, and it's really easy to do things with either not the greatest form or not the best breath control. So I love to really evaluate people for that, but I definitely can give, some general strengthening exercises and stuff. And if you follow my Instagram, I try to do a lot of videos and stuff on ways to incorporate the pelvic floor into your exercise programs. I also love to do pre-birth sessions with clients to talk about, what to expect with pushing and just kind of what the pelvic floor should be doing during your birth process. So yes. Can I touch on menstruation and leaking? Yeah, that's a great question. So because of the hormonal changes that occur with our menstruation time, all pelvic floor dysfunctions, whether it's leaking or whether it's pain or whether it's prolapse symptoms, heaviness, pressure, can get worse during the time of our time of the month. That's just a really, really common thing, and it's because of the changes in our hormones. So you can be proactive about that and try, you can know, okay, I'm going to have my period next week. So like I should be, upping my routine to help relax these, whatever your situation is. But it's really common that pelvic floor dysfunction in general and just back pain symptoms, like anything in the pelvis, can get worse during pregnancy, or not during pregnancy, during menstruation. So that's really common, but it's mostly due to the hormonal changes. So during that time, really upping your program, whatever it is that you're doing to help with the leakage, can be helpful. But know that it's normal. Sometimes it's just part of being a girl and having a period. Okay, what causes pain with sex? Sorry, it's scrolling so funky. Let me see if I can move this bigger. What causes pain with sex? 9 out of 10 times I struggle with relaxing my pelvic floor. Is that the issue? Yeah, so pain with sex is complicated because there can be a lot of factors that go on. I would never want to say that it's always tight pelvic floor muscles, but if I were to do a case study on all of the people that I treat, I would say that the ratio of high tension pelvic floors, especially in fit people, or even just more stressed people, kind of the type A people, just most people in general, it's that they're more likely to have tension in the pelvic floor than no tension, or like, too much length. And I think it's because we're a very high stress society. We carry stress in all parts of our body that we don't even realize. So that can cause pain with sex. The other thing with sex is that our ability to be self-lubricating is not consistent all the time. So one of my best pieces of advice for pain with sex is finding a lube that you like. If you go on my Instagram, I have lots of posts about lube, but there's so many options. Slippery Stuff is my favorite water-based. Uber Lube is my favorite silicone-based. Go Love CBD is an awesome water-based CBD lube that I adore because they're just really good people, and they've done so much work to make sure that it's a really, really good quality CBD lube. And when you buy the pump, it pumps out exactly how much, you can know exactly how much CBD you're getting each time. CBD can be naturally helpful with pain, inflammation. It's wonderful. I use it a lot with my clients who have too much pain, even with a vaginal exam. And if you touch base with me, I have samples of all of these that I can give you for free, so you can try to find out what works best for you. But yeah, lube is a big piece of it. And then, finding ways to allow your body to be ready for sex. Again, our pelvic floor has to relax in order for us to have sex comfortably. And so if we are thinking about the dishes, or if we are, worried about work, and if we've got all those things in our brains, it can be hard for our bodies to relax. And so it's not always the case. It's usually a lot of pieces. It can be a number of things, but lubrication would be my big one. And then, getting into a routine where you feel comfortable and excited and happy about sex can be really helpful too. And the cool thing with the CBD lube is sometimes they recommend putting a little bit inside or externally, wherever the pain is, 15 minutes before. So that's something that you can kind of take control of and say, okay, I'm doing this for myself first because this is something that really helps me. And so you really like that component. And you can do the same with just regular lube too. Sometimes just getting more lubrication can help your brain and body connect to be ready for sex. Okay, someone says, I'm curious about the Kegel trainers like LV or Parafit. I get lots of ads as I'm becoming pregnant. Yeah, okay, so I have an LV that I bought during one of my first pelvic floor courses because I was just curious how it worked. They're getting much more advanced now. So an LV or Parafit is basically a, what am I trying to say? It's a tool, a biofeedback tool most are inserted into the vaginal canal, and then they have little programs on your phone where you can practice like doing a contraction. The cool thing about them now is they are much more advanced in that they can sense pressure. So with a Kegel, what should happen is the pelvic floor should lift and kind of pull forward to the pubic bone. So if I've got my finger, if I'm doing an assessment and the person's laying on their back here, I should, if they have a strong contraction, it should pull me in and forward. And so the cool thing about those little tools now is that they will actually sense if you're actually pushing out, like if you're doing a Kegel wrong, they'll be able to sense that and not just like, are you lifting, but they can sense how much pressure. And they're kind of fun. I mean, you know, they're cool, but until you've had an assessment from somebody to know if you're doing it correctly and if you need strengthening, I wouldn't recommend it. But for my clients who just like want a fun way to do their Kegels after we know that they're doing them correctly, and they enjoy the feedback and the tools, that can be really helpful. So you wouldn't just like go out and buy one until you've had an assessment and you know what you actually need. Because again, if you're here and then you add that tool and you're just like doing this all day, it's not going to make anything better. It's definitely not going to prepare for birth where you need to be out here. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I don't know why it's scrolling so crazy. To jump off Facebook group. Okay. Okay, I think I got to everyone's question. Was there anything I missed? Okay. And feel free to speak up or. Yes, yeah, save some money. They can be expensive, those little tools. I was able to use my health savings account, but yeah, they can be kind of a little bit expensive. So I wouldn't get one until you know you need one. But they can be kind of fun. I mean, just as a cool way to work on that area. So other things that just came up in my comments from people was someone said, I didn't get any pelvic floor PT because I had a C-section with the first child. And there's just a lot of evidence that shows that people can have just as much pelvic floor, I hate the word dysfunction, but just issue after having a cesarean as much as having a vaginal birth. It's a cesarean is not protective of pelvic floor issues. So just know that it can be a component, even if you just have a cesarean. So getting pelvic floor PT after you've delivered a baby in whatever way baby came to this world is beneficial. So that was one thing. And then somebody asked if I offer groups to like mini talks for mom groups. Yes, I love educating. It's like 100% my passion. So if any of you are in any mom groups that you think would benefit from this information, I would be happy to give them a free talk for sure. We touched on pessaries. If you are local and you need someone to fit a pessary, I don't do that, but I know a great doctor that does. So I can connect you if you're local. And then the tools. Okay, cool. Do I travel to the gorge? I'm in Beaverton, but yeah, I travel all over. I go up into Vancouver, I go to Salem. So I'll see you. I'm happy to see everybody. As long as you're not like in Idaho, I don't know. If you're in Oregon or Washington, Seattle's a little far for me, but I know some good people up there. I even went to Eugene recently to see somebody. So if you need me, I can make it work. What is my cost and approved insurance? So I am out of network with insurance, but everything that I do is covered by out of network benefits. So and a lot of people don't know about insurance. So I'll just give you a quick little talk about that. But you have your in-network benefits, which generally cover a little bit more if you see an in-network provider. Then you have your out-of-network benefits, which may cover, 5 or 10% less. But if you have an out-of-network plan, which most of us do through our insurance plan, What happens is we charge you for the cost of the session, and then after the session, I provide you a super bill, which is like a receipt that you send to your insurance company, and then they reimburse you directly. My cost for an appointment, 1 hour appointment, is $160, which is very cheap compared to all the other people in our area. But I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in getting you the care that you deserve. People think that it's expensive, and it is, but it's very valuable. And I talked to a mom the other day who said she spent like $159 on like a pair of pants, and she was like, yeah, so I guess like, to fix my leaking, it makes sense that I should pay for this. But most of my clients get some level of reimbursement. Every once in a while, I have somebody with like a $10,000 deductible, and I'm not gonna hit that with you. So if you have a really high out-of-network deductible, that can be challenging, but otherwise most people get some level of reimbursement, and it can be anywhere from like 20% to 75%, depending on your insurance plan. And then if you have a health savings account or a flexible spending account, we can use that money. I also give like a little discount if you refer somebody to me. What else? But the difference with me is that I treat in the home and I treat one-on-one. I also communicate with you in between appointments. I'm very available to my clients. So if they need something, if somebody's flared up and they don't know what to do, I try to really be accessible, because I used to work in a clinic where I saw 20 people a day and couldn't talk to any of them between appointments, and it's hard to do my job well. So now I'm able to really assess people's issues and get them better faster. And most of my clients need, my average plan of care is probably 5 visits, and 3 to 7 would be really all we need. And every case is going to be a little bit different, but I work with you to figure out what's going to be best, and what we can do in the meantime if we need to space things out or whatever. But I think our society needs to put more emphasis on preventative care and just getting people better so that you're not 65 and still leaking. So if it's something that you spend, a couple $100 on now, so that it's resolved, it's totally worth it, in my opinion. Okay, those are all the questions, and it's 8 o'clock. We magically kept it at an hour. So proud of us. So I'm going to give you guys a few more minutes if anybody wants to ask anything else. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate all of you coming. I know it's hard to get away, and sometimes it's really hard to be on the screen if you're working from home and all that in the evenings too. But I really think this is important, and I'm glad that I was able to connect with all of you, and I'll be touching base. So I'm going to be raffling off a free squatty potty. So that's going to be the prize. So everybody that was here today will be entered, and I'll have my husband pick it. And then I will be sending you some exercises about how to kind of lengthen and stretch the pelvic floor. And then I will be just touching base with all of you. If you have specific concerns in your local, I'd love to touch base. I do a free 30-minute phone consultation, because even if I'm not the right person for you, I can help you find somebody that is. Perfect. But I appreciate all of you taking the time this evening. And this recording, I'll send you the recording as well. So you'll get this. So if you're like, what did she say about that? You can always go back and feel free to share it with your friends if there's anybody that you wanted to invite but didn't get to it. It's free information. It's not the whole, okay, Molly has a squatty potty, so I'll take her out of the raffle. Sounds good. We have 3 bathrooms, and I just told my husband, I said, we gotta get another one for the 3rd bathroom, because we only like poop in the 2 bathrooms. So good to have one in every room, every bathroom if you have multiple, but perfect. Elvira has a squatty potty. Nice. So anything else that everyone should get a squatty. It's remarkable how much it changes and allows you to really empty and have a good poo, which everyone deserves. So If you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can reach me. I'm going to shoot my email in here. And I'm on Instagram at Dr. Meredith PT, DPT, I think. I get so confused on all my names. But I know a lot of you have found me on there. Let me make sure I give you the right name. It's Dr. Okay. Here's my Instagram, and I do post a lot of cool stuff on there, so you can always follow me for free information there. And I know some of you are in PT school and wanted to learn about pelvic health, which is super, super exciting. I didn't get into pelvic health until I was about 2 years out of school. And I wish I would have found it sooner because it's 1000% my passion. So I think it's great that you guys are learning about it in school already. It's really, really important. And you'll find in your practice that most of your low back pain patients, hip pain patients, chronic pelvic issue have some sort of pelvic dysfunction. So if you're not a pelvic PT, finding a trusted pelvic PT in your community is really powerful because those people often need both. So yeah, I'm excited that you guys are here. I've been out of school for about 5 years now, and I love connecting with students and kind of getting to hear everything that they're learning because PT school is always changing. Yeah, I'm also on Facebook. I think it's just Dr. Meredith Brzezinski. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me with anything, any questions, anything at all. I appreciate you all so much for coming, and I will let you go. So thank you again.